Welcome to the Binge. Every episode we pick something oddly fascinating, turn it over a few times, stare at the weird corners, and ask why it exists at all. Sometimes the answer is obvious, and sometimes the answer is ridiculous. Usually it's both. Today, the history of elevators. The metal box that quietly changed civilization and somehow became the setting for thousands of awkward silences, horror movies, and workplace small talk disasters.
It's the Binge Podcast where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast. Come join us fast.
Imagine you're standing in a major city in 1850. You look up at a 6-story building and think, wow, that's tall. Today, a 6-story building is where dentists have offices. But back then, 6 stories was enough to make people complain. Not because the building was dangerous, not because it blocked sunlight, not because property values would fall. Because stairs suck. Human beings have spent most of history pretending we don't mind stairs. We absolutely mind stairs. If a magical creature appeared right now and offered to eliminate every staircase on Earth, humanity would sign the paperwork before the creature finished speaking. For thousands of years, vertical movement was one of civilization's biggest practical problems. Moving things horizontally is easy. Put it on a cart. Moving things vertically is a nightmare. Need stones for a pyramid? Drag them uphill. Need supplies to the top of a fortress? Good luck. Need furniture on the 5th floor? Prepare for suffering. The simple reality was that height came with a cost, and that cost was measured in sweat, profanity, and lower back injuries. What's fascinating is that elevators are ancient. The basic concept goes back to the ancient world. Even the Romans had lifting platforms powered by people, animals, and pulleys. But those weren't elevators in the modern sense. They were more like mechanical declarations of war against physics. Someone or something had to provide the muscle. And if the rope failed, well, the ride got exciting very quickly. For centuries, this remained the problem. You could build lifting systems. You couldn't convince people to trust them. Because being suspended hundreds of feet above the ground by a rope requires an astonishing level of optimism, and humans are surprisingly good at imagining worst-case scenarios, especially when they're dangling. By the early 1800s, industrialization created a demand for moving goods inside factories and warehouses. Freight elevators became more common, but passenger elevators remained rare. People had a very reasonable question. What happens if the rope snaps? Unfortunately, the answer was, you die, which tends to discourage adoption. Then along came one of history's great underappreciated heroes, a man named Elisha Otis. Now, the interesting thing about technological revolutions is that they often hinge on one seemingly small improvement. The steam engine wasn't one invention. The airplane wasn't one invention. The internet wasn't one invention, and the elevator wasn't one invention. The breakthrough was trust. Otis developed a safety brake system. If the hoisting rope failed, mechanical catches would engage and stop the platform from plummeting. Simple idea. World-changing consequence. But here's the brilliant part. In 1854, at a public exhibition in New York, Otis demonstrated it. He stood on a platform suspended high above a crowd. Then he had someone cut the rope, which is not a sentence most people want associated with their day. The crowd watched. The rope snapped. The platform dropped a short distance. The safety mechanism engaged. Otis survived. The audience lost its collective mind, and just like that, elevators became psychologically possible. It's difficult to overstate how important that moment was. Modern cities depend on people believing they won't die in elevators. That's it. That trust is the foundation of skylines. Without it, no skyscrapers. No luxury penthouses, no observation decks, no 70-story office towers where employees spend entire careers wondering why meetings exist. Everything changes. Before elevators, the most desirable apartments in a building were usually on lower floors. Makes sense. Nobody wanted to climb 6 flights carrying groceries. The rich lived low, the poor lived high. Then, elevators arrived. Suddenly, the upper floors became premium real estate. Better views, less noise, more status. The social order of buildings literally flipped upside down. The wealthy moved upward, the poor moved downward. Architecture changed, economics changed, cities changed. all because people stopped worrying about ropes. And once the elevator proved itself, civilization got ambitious, very ambitious. Skyscrapers emerged. Steel frame construction helped. Electricity helped. But elevators made the whole thing practical. Without elevators, a 100-story building is basically a punishment device. Imagine climbing to the 90th floor every morning. You'd quit your job by Wednesday. The elevator transformed height from an obstacle into an asset. And then, because humans can never leave well enough alone, we started making elevators faster. At first, they moved cautiously, reasonably, like machines aware of mortality. Then engineers got competitive. Now there are elevators moving at speeds that would have seemed completely insane to earlier generations. You step inside, the doors close. A few seconds later, your ears pop. Your body briefly questions what's happening, and you're 40 floors higher. There's something almost magical about it. Most technology announces itself. Cars are loud, airplanes are dramatic, rocket launches look like the apocalypse. Elevators just quietly cheat gravity. Every day, millions of times, and nobody applauds. In fact, the more reliable an elevator becomes, the less anyone notices it. The perfect elevator experience is completely forgettable. You enter, you leave, nothing happens. Human beings have a strange relationship with successful technology. The better it works, the more invisible it becomes. Consider how much engineering is involved. Counterweights, motors, safety systems, control software, emergency brakes, sensors, communication systems, redundant backups, entire teams of experts making sure a steel box carries strangers vertically without incident. And our response is usually, floor 7. That's it. No appreciation. No wonder engineers drink. Elevators also created one of the weirdest social environments ever invented, the elevator ride. A tiny room full of strangers, everyone facing the same direction, nobody speaking, nobody making eye contact, everyone pretending the others don't exist. It's like a temporary social ceasefire. Human interaction pauses. For 20 seconds, society enters an alternate operating mode. There are unwritten rules. Face forward. Respect personal space. Look at the floor numbers. Do not become the main character. And if someone breaks these rules, everybody notices. The person who starts a loud phone call, the person who stands too close, the person who turns around and faces everyone. That last one should probably trigger an alarm. Movies figured this out quickly. Elevators are perfect for tension. You trap people together. You limit escape routes. You create uncertainty. Few filmmakers understand this better than David Fincher. Fincher has always been fascinated by controlled spaces, places where pressure builds, where people become trapped by circumstances, where tiny details matter. An elevator is basically a Fincher set waiting to happen. It's a machine designed to compress human discomfort into a vertical journey. Nothing catastrophic needs to happen. The possibility is enough. That's what makes elevators interesting psychologically. Most people trust them, but not completely. There's always a tiny primitive voice in the back of your brain asking, what if this is the one? It never is. Statistically, elevators are incredibly safe, far safer than many things we casually do every day. But our brains aren't statistical machines, they're storytelling machines, and stories about falling are memorable. Stories about safe transportation are not. Nobody gathers friends around a campfire to describe a completely uneventful elevator ride. The modern elevator has become so common that it's easy to forget how strange the concept actually is. Imagine explaining it to someone from the Middle Ages. You enter a room, the room moves, you emerge 60 stories higher. The room then returns to collect other people. This happens all day. Nobody considers it remarkable. The medieval visitor would assume sorcery. Honestly, not an unreasonable conclusion. And now we're entering another fascinating phase. Smart elevators. Destination dispatch systems. Artificial intelligence managing traffic flow. Buildings that predict movement patterns. Elevators that know where you're going before you press a button. Which is either impressive or mildly unsettling, depending on your feelings about technology. Some engineers are even exploring entirely new approaches, elevators that move horizontally as well as vertically, systems designed for increasingly enormous structures, concepts that sound suspiciously like science fiction. And if history teaches anything, it's that today's absurd idea is tomorrow's boring infrastructure. At some point, elevators themselves felt impossible, then dangerous, then unusual, then normal. Now, they're background noise. the fate of all successful inventions. What I love about elevators is that they reveal something fundamental about human progress. We often imagine history being changed by dramatic events, wars, presidents, revolutions, empires, but sometimes civilization changes because somebody solves an annoying practical problem. Sometimes the future arrives in the form of a safer pulley, a better brake, a stronger cable, a slightly less terrifying ride, and then suddenly cities grow taller. Property values change. Social classes rearrange themselves. Architects rethink what's possible. Millions of people live differently, all because one machine made gravity slightly less inconvenient, which may be the most human story imaginable. We're a species that looked at one of the fundamental forces of the universe and said, yeah, that's fine, but could we not? And somehow, through engineering, persistence, and a frankly unreasonable amount of steel, we got our way. Every skyscraper on Earth is a monument to that attitude. Every glass tower piercing the clouds, every observation deck, every penthouse, every office worker heading to the 47th floor carrying a coffee. They're all participating in a quiet revolution that started with people being sick of stairs. And honestly, it's a pretty damn good reason to change the world. That's it for this episode of The Binge. Next time, we'll find another ordinary thing hiding in an extraordinary story. Until then, watch your step and appreciate the little metal box doing all the hard work. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe.
Tune in right now. Got stories to tell, from the small to the grand, all under one spell. We talk about this, we laugh about that, from the strange to the bliss. Get ready to chat. It's the Binge Podcast, where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast. Right now, got stories to tell, from the small to the grand, all under one spell. We talk about this, we laugh about that, from the strange to the bliss. Get ready to chat. It's the Binge Podcast, where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast. Where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast. Tune in right now. Stories to tell, from the small to the grand, all under one spell. We talk about this, we laugh about that, from the strange to the bliss. Get ready to chat. It's the Binge Podcast, where everything's a blast. It's the Binge Podcast, come join us fast.